Welcome to Cabomil News and Community Update in English. This is Corey Riggs along with Claudia Velo, and you are listening on June 27th on 96.3 FM Cabomil, or you're watching us on Facebook at Cabomil News. Claudia, how are you today?
I'm great, and I'm actually enjoying this unusual cool weather that we're having. I mean, it's warm, it's sunny, but it certainly doesn't feel like summer yet.
It's so great to be outside, actually, and there's a little wind going. And I understand you were up in Todos Santos today.
I was until just a little while ago, and Todos Santos is truly a beautiful oasis. It's cool and oh my God, so many cool places and delicious places to visit. I highly recommend hanging out at Doom, and of course, the El Faro and El Mirador are three places that are so much fun and a wonderful way to spend your day. You know, something really nice about being in Cabo is that you can get away from the wonderfulness of Cabo and go to the other wonderfulness, to Todos Santos, just an hour away.
Absolutely. And it's a Pueblo Mágico. We should actually have a show and invite someone on to talk about Pueblo Mágicos in Mexico, because what a great topic that would be. Because everyone needs to know, if you have not been to Todos Santos, you need to go check it out. And you can go through Pescadero. There are so many great places, Claudia, that people need to visit. And they only get stuck in Cabo. So they gotta get out. They gotta get out.
Head out there. It's beautiful. So many like organic vegetables and organic produce available, and more farm to table little restaurants, little fun, funky bars and places that you can go and have some food while you're drinking and enjoy like the fresh seafood and all that. I mean, it's amazing. Amazing.
And if you are going to go to Doom, which we both highly recommend, get a reservation, because it's always full.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which now in our reality, COVID reality, you should make reservations wherever you go. Even if it's a little place that normally you wouldn't make a reservation, that's highly recommended, because you never know. They might be at full capacity for all we know.
Well, look, we made it 2 minutes into the program without mentioning the word COVID, and here it comes up. And we're going to actually talk about that today. We have a very interesting segment. In the second segment, we're going to talk about fear and how to get through fear, and just some of the interesting things that have been happening to all of us over the last, how long has it been? A year and a half now? I just can't believe it.
It's been forever. March of 2020 is when it all started. Yeah.
So lots of interesting things have come out, lots of new articles, lots of things that we are going to talk about. What can you tell us about the news right now, Claudia?
Well, the big news, of course, was the announcement that was made by the governor and then followed by the confirmation from the Secretary of Health that the municipalities of La Paz and Los Cabos were moving back to alert level 5 in the health alert system. This due to a rapid increase in the number of new confirmed cases and, of course, hospital occupancy. The news, I mean, the decision was to put La Paz and Los Cabos, both municipalities, at level 5 for a week until June 29. And then, of course, on the 28th, they will review where we are. But the head epidemiologist did say this will continue. There will be a higher number of cases over the next probably 2 weeks before it starts to decline, because that is the natural evolution of the epidemic and the disease. So that's
and isn't it true, this isn't really a hard level 5, it's more of a modified level 5, correct? This isn't it's like a dark orange.
Exactly, it's a dark orange. We're not in lockdown. And also the authorities reviewed which activities were allowed at level 5. Really what they're doing is they're reducing the maximum capacity for a lot of activities. Some things that have been published, for example, they said no sports fishing. That's not true. Sports fishing is allowed with lower capacity at 30% maximum capacity. So and then again, tourist activities are allowed, but they cannot have the offices open. So it's more like you can still do the things that you were doing, but you cannot go to the offices and have people kind of hang out together in closed spaces.
Mm,
I'm oversimplifying it, of course. Don't say that. Claudia Velo says it's not a big deal. It is obviously something that we have to be aware of, but it's also, I just think, and we'll talk more about this later, but we don't need to panic. We don't need to be afraid of everything. I think.
Yeah, yeah, and definitely, I look forward to that conversation. The interesting thing, I believe that I think this was the health director of the state that said that there's no way we're going to go back to lockdowns. And we talked about this last week, Claudia. And one of the things he mentioned was, hey, there's going to be more criminal activity if we ever went back to lockdowns, because people, we can't stop the economy again. We've got it going again. Can you imagine going back to the days of where we were doing those massive deliveries of food? And I just think there's got to be a balance. And we'll talk about also in our conversation about balance and what things you're weighing, because there's definitely some downsides to locking people out of the economy. And there's a lot of unintended consequences that we know much better about now than anybody knew when this first thing started. And people just thought they didn't know what to expect. And there was a lot of fear. So
yes, and fear is not a good thing, but we will definitely be talking more about that. At this point, like I said, the big news is that we're back to level 5, at least until June 29. And that created a lot of questions, especially for people who were ready to travel to Los Cabos over the next few days and weeks. And last week, towards the end of the week, I had the opportunity to interview both Mauricio Salicrup, who is the president of the Los Cabos Hotel Association, and Rodrigo Esponda, who is the executive director for the Los Cabos Tourism Board, on that topic. So what do you think if we go and listen to what they have to say?
I can't wait to hear what they have to say. Let's hear it.
Mauricio Salicrup, executive president for the Los Cabos Hotel Association. Mauricio, welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much to meet me here. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's important for you to be here because, as everybody knows by now, Los Cabos, the municipality of Los Cabos, has gone back to alert level 5. And this is something that has created some concern among travelers who are considering to change their travel plans. Can you please tell us what this return to level 5 means for the hotels and for the resort area in general here in Los Cabos?
Well, we expected to have that information from the government from on the table of the security and health, because we noticed that we have some and the cases every single day. We pass from the 20 persons to more or less 80 persons per day. And we understand that the government needs to take measures and about it, and that's why they return to the level 4. Now, the hotel associations, the things that we working on to help the government to stop this increase in the cases, is we are doing PCR proofs to all our employees to find the ones to have the virus, the COVID, and taking care of them in home or in some hotels at the hotel. And in that way, we're gonna do less contamination. I mean, less people having the COVID every single day. And also we obviously work together with the Consejo Coordinador de los Cabos and with directly with the Instituto Mexicano del Seguro Social and the Secretaría de Salud to see that the way they work with the hospitals. Right now, it's a lot of information in the red and the social community, but actually, not all of them are true. I mean, we have this contingency with a lot work with the Seguro Social and Secretaría de Salud. Right now, we have a high occupancy in the hospital. That's true, but it's not true that we don't have more places available from more people. That's the reason that we're gonna work with the PCR proofs to avoid the possibility to have people needed the hospital.
Now, something that has been the concern for some travelers is whether this return to level 5 means lesser occupancy in the hotels. And if they already had a confirmation, does this mean that their confirmations may be canceled, or how are the hotels going to handle that?
Well, we handled all the confirmations that we got right now. We're gonna respect them. I mean, that is for sure. If they have the travel plans already done, they don't need to do any changes if they don't want to do it. Okay.
Mhm.
And obviously, as you know, the hotel associations take measures and about all the protocols, the healthy protocols, and we create again one commission to review that protocols in every single hotel.
Mhm.
That means maybe we don't gonna have the chance to reduce to the 30% occupancy in less than a week. And obviously that give us the opportunity to be very, very clear and very professionals and apply all the protocols inside the hotels.
Right, right. That's very important. And also the other question was whether the hotels have seen an increase in the number of positive COVID cases among tourists. We know that tourists have to take a test before they go back to the States and Canada. And but have there been lots of positive results for these tests for people who have been here in Los Cabos in terms of tourists?
Well, for the hotel association and also for the Canirac, which is the restaurants, we have a very clear. The problem is not with the tourists. I mean, the people to come to Cabo, more likely, most of them has the vaccine already, and also another point is if they coming before they coming they do antigen proof because they knew they're gonna need to get back to the United States. And they don't have made a mistakes in about it and stay longer in Cabo just because they don't take measures.
Mhm.
That's why we have very clear we don't have and also the amount of tourists to get the positive results and the antigen proof is very slow. I mean, in is less than the 0.05 per per all the customers coming from United States. I mean, that's the tourists is not the problem. The problem is because in the community we release some of the best practice in about the ensure our health. That's the problem.
Exactly. And that's so important to communicate. So thank you very much for clarifying that. Really appreciate this. It brings a lot of clarity to some of the situations, especially for tourists considering visiting Los Cabos. So thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And I will let you get back to your work because I know you're super busy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And sorry for my very bad English, but I trying to expose everything I have in the mind.
Oh, that was a great interview, Claudia. Thank you. I think that helps a lot. And I know we're going to listen to Rodrigo as well right now, Rodrigo Esponda, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say as well.
Yes, he had some interesting comments, and just like Mauricio did, clarify some of the misconceptions. You know, it's not exactly as people are reading. And so it's good to have the opportunity to hear from the actual actors that are clarifying the situation. So let's hear what Rodrigo has to say. Rodrigo Esponda, Executive Director for the Los Cabos Tourism Board. Rodrigo, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Claudia, for the opportunity to be here again.
Well, as you know, we've gone back to level 5 in the health alert system. And this means that certain spaces need to operate at 30% capacity. There has been questions from travelers that are planning to come to Los Cabos regarding what does this mean for their travel plans. Can you please tell us about this?
Well, exactly as you pointed out, there are certain restrictions that are very important to follow, and we need to consider that the system as it was implemented is precisely to provide the highest level of safety to the travelers. So, and we know it because we track it in the exit survey, that the travelers perceive these protocols and they rate it as very good. Not only in the hotels, but also in the restaurants and activities, tourism services, and in general in the destination. The tourist, national and international visitors, they leave the destination with a very good rate of all the measures and the efforts, the protocols that we have been implementing. And I think that needs to be encouraging. However, definitely it is a situation that we need everyone to really work very hard to contain the transmission, and precisely these limits and these protocols that are in place are geared towards that, to really have a sustainable recovery of the destination with all the health measures. I am truly confident that moving forward with this little effort that we need to do now, it would be a very positive summer moving along.
Wonderful. Now, something that it's important, and there has been some confusion, while we have gone back to level 5 and there's this limitation of 30% capacity, the tourist activities are still open. Is that correct?
It is correct. All the tourism activities are open. They just need to limit the number of people that can go through, and of course, abide to the strict protocols. And that's very important. The use of face mask, the use of hand sanitizer, the physical distancing that has to be maintained while the activity, the transportation, and it's the same in the properties, in the hotels, in the villas, in the restaurants. Those protocols are really geared to protect the visitors and the community alike.
Wonderful. So even though there has been this kind of like setback, we're still moving along. And as you say, the forecast is for a solid and geared for a really positive summer. Is that the expectation from the tourism board?
Yes, we have been communicating with partners, all type of partners, travel agencies, airlines, wholesalers, and so on. And we are really making sure that they understand that all these protocols are focused to provide the highest level of safety. One important point is that we have been tracking how the portion of the international visitors that come to Los Cabos that are already fully vaccinated. And we know it, that in a very, very high percentage, most of the visitors are already vaccinated. And we track it and we analyze it, and we see that those who are not is because they are on the younger segment that they need to wait, because in their origins, there are some states that are still later they open for younger generations. So that needs to give confidence because the tourists are not coming to being any focal point. And then also every day, thousands of tourists get back to the United States. The lowest number of people that have been returning to the United States per day, it's 6,000. From there, it goes all the way to up 9,000 people that go back to the United States every day. All of them are getting back after passing a testing with a negative result and a negative certificate. So the tourists are really not coming with any specific type of contagion. But we need to make a big effort in Los Cabos to contain the transmission that is done at a local level.
Yes, that was exactly my next question. If there was a statistic where we knew how many of the tourists that are leaving Los Cabos have resulted positive for COVID, which would suggest that, you know, they might be a source of infection, but you've just answered that.
Yeah, it's minimal because as imagine to have 6,000 people traveling back to the United States, all of them had to go through a testing process and getting a negative result. The number of positive cases are truly getting very, very, very minimal as the weeks have been passing, especially because as the other statistics that I already mentioned, is that most of the visitors coming from the United States are already vaccinated. So then, of course, the chances, the likelihood to getting the virus, it's very, very small.
So overall, in face of this current situation, the forecast continues to be positive for Los Cabos.
It continues to be positive. However, we need really to make sure that we follow all the instructions of the authorities, that we comply with the protocols, that we make sure that we understand that we need to use the face mask, that we need to protect ourselves, our loved ones, our community, our coworkers, because that way we are protecting the whole destination and we would have a sustainable recovery moving forward.
And in your impression and the impression of the tourism board, it is obvious that the people that work for the hospitality industry, for the hotels, are used to going to work and wearing their face masks. What is the attitude of the tourists and the visitors to Los Cabos in regards of complying with these protocols?
Well, there are all different type of perspectives. We understand that in many of the states in the United States, they don't need now to wear the face mask, and there are different regulations. However, we pointed out that it is very clear that in Los Cabos, everyone needs to wear the face mask and follow the other protocols, precisely because the asymmetry between the vaccination rate that is moving forward very fast in the United States and is moving slower in the case of Los Cabos. And of course, we have been making a big effort to speed up that process, and hopefully very soon that would really catch up, and then we will have a much positive environment in the fact that the visitors are already vaccinated and the community needs to be as well already vaccinated.
Well, very good. It's great to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, wouldn't you say, Claudia? And I wasn't calling Rodrigo a horse, by the way. So
an eloquent horse.
Always great to have him. We have to have him back on the show live so we can both interview him and we can ask him about his shark swimming. Because now I can mention that I've had that same experience now, so we can follow up with him. All right, well, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with us. We have some good, interesting topics to talk about when we come back after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Cabomil News and Community Update in English. This is Corey Riggs with Claudia Velo, and today is June 27th. Claudia, what a great interviews with Mauricio Salicrup of the Hotel Association and Rodrigo Esponda, who's the head of the tourism. If you haven't heard it, go back and watch us on Facebook at Cabomil News and make sure that you hear all of that. Well, Claudia, we're gonna get into a very interesting topic that you and I have been talking about for a while, and I think it was addressed in both with Rodrigo and Mauricio in a way, and that's about fear and having the wrong information that's causing fear. And I think we've seen a lot of that over the last year and a half.
Absolutely. And the thing is that when fear is the motor for our actions, we become incapable of actual rational thinking. And so we shouldn't let fear be the motivator for our actions. And that's something that sometimes when you're constantly hearing about something that is bad and a situation that is getting worse, and you tend to trigger, these are things that trigger your fear and then trigger survival actions. And when we are in survival mode, sometimes we're not thinking with our brain. And that's what sometimes, all the time.
Well, and you see it a lot. I have to tell you, I went to lunch with a friend of mine last week, and not to call out my friend because I respect everyone how they're feeling about things. Totally get it. But they came to the card reader, and I paid for my lunch with the credit card, and they wanted to make sure that everything was clean. The credit card was cleaned with the with the gel, with the antibacterial gel in their hand. And again, I totally respect it, but it's just funny to me because this is why it's funny. The CDC and the WHO have both come out and said that this is not being transmitted that way. Right. It's just not being transmitted that way. But what happens is people got this in their mind from the beginning. Because if you remember, at the very beginning of this, there was these videos about how you can disinfect your groceries that are left at your doorstep, and how you must disinfect your clothes, and just this whole thing. And remember all the cleaning of everything. And what's funny about it is it's still going on in Los Cabos. The before you walk into a restaurant, they sanitize the whole table. And but in a way that instead of just cleaning it, which of course that sanitizes it too, there's these special things they're doing. And you remember walking through tunnels to go to certain restaurants and getting sprayed with something. That thankfully has gone away. Yeah. in most places. But it's just people got into fear. And my favorite are the feet things that are still around.
Oh, those are very much around. Yes.
I still don't understand those. If someone could explain it, I'd like to understand it anyway.
I've always wondered, like, because when you walk, you pick up. Anyway, I won't go there.
Yeah, but the whole point is there's been these myths that have propagated themselves, and they've tied into people's fear in a way that people are just accepting things that I think a year and a half ago, if everyone looked back, there's no way you would accept that. Right. And you would question it. And there's just a lot of interesting things that happen. And there's a new book out, and I'm showing it. If you're on Facebook Live, you can see it on the screen, but it's called A State of Fear. And it's by Laura Dodsworth. You can look her up. Great, lots of history of writing exposés. Really understand. She's British, and this book is about the British response to this, which a lot of people could argue Britain is one of the most authoritarian responses, most in the world. You put Britain, Canada, and Australia pretty close together with the way they've been handling this. And she outlines in this book, which I highly recommend. It's on Audible, so you can listen to it. But just how this culture of fear is propagated, and how much social media was used to send images around that weren't real, by the way. There were images that were coming out in January 2020 of people falling in the street in China. I don't know if you remember these, Claudia.
Yeah, I do.
Or of people being pulled out of their houses screaming in China. And a lot of this has been proven to either not be true, or they've been taken off somewhere, but there were
context. Yes, they're within a different context.
And so it's just interesting. And even in Mauricio's interview, he was talking about how there's so much fake news out there right now about what we're dealing with. And this thing about the hospitals being full, it's just not true. And are they fuller? Yeah, absolutely. But I've seen these things on Facebook or on Instagram where there's these things that list all the hospitals. It's all in red writing, and it says 100% full, 100% full, 100, and that does nothing but scare people to death.
And that's the thing, that the easiest way to control people is through fear. You know, you're afraid of getting sick. You're afraid of your family getting sick. You're afraid of dying. And it's all valid, but it's the easiest way to control people. And you have to look at the evidence. Definitely following sanitary protocols makes sense. And proof is that since we started with this whole thing, people have been less sick. You know, you don't get the flu, you don't get the cold, because you are washing your hands all the time. You are being more careful. You're probably taking more vitamins. You're hopefully eating better. And we're in a place where we can go outside and enjoy the sun and get the benefits of being out in the sun. And so, you know, you are healthier, but the truth is that as news start to spread, and these are the news that have that high shock value, that obviously get you more likes and more shares and more comments, that increases the fear. And it's all about, I'm not saying don't be careful. I'm saying don't be afraid, and don't let fear guide your actions. Of course, be careful. Of course, take care of yourself, of your family and your loved ones, but from a rational point of view, not based on fear. And because also when we're afraid, and I've seen this, and it's been published and it's been proven, you start trying to attack others who are not acting accordingly to what you think is the right way to act based on fear. And for example, you see people that are standing online at a bank, and you start going like, what are they doing? Well, they're standing online on a bank. They're wearing their face masks. They're maintaining as much social distance as they possibly can. And they need to be at the bank. You should not kind of like criticize them and make them look as the bad guys, because they're outside doing something, when you think no, everybody should be staying hidden under the covers. It's just no.
Well, there's so many interesting things. You were talking about the shocking headlines, get more clicks, get more likes. And the other thing it does is it gets more advertising revenue for people. And so news has always been known to do, if it bleeds, it leads. And this has been a boon for them to make it worse, to make it as bad as possible. And that's why I love this book, A State of Fear, because she addresses this. She talks about how the news media, they use information that was true, but they interpreted it in a way that just caused fear. She used one example of saying that the military had to be brought in to get rid of dead bodies in Italy. That was a headline.
Yeah.
And the truth is that was true, but it was because all the funeral parlors, they weren't allowed to leave their homes because they were in lockdown. And so there was these bodies that had, I don't want to say piled up, that's not the right words to use, but they weren't even COVID deaths. It was just the military trucks had to be used to get them, because the normal funeral trucks could not be used.
They're not available. Yeah.
And so they twisted that headline around. That went around the world.
Yeah.
And the fear created by that headline, she uses that one in particular, it spread way faster than the virus. And that's the thing is fear spreads faster than the virus. I have Mark Twain, who I love to quote, because first of all, he's my fourth cousin.
He's your relative.
He's my fourth cousin, so I love to say that. But
yeah.
Anyway, from my genealogy, by the way, that's how I know that. And he says something about, I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience. I love that.
Love that.
It's like, and when you live life like that, just realize, hey, we're all going in the same direction. It's much better to live than cower in fear. And people have been almost gotten in a habit of cowering in fear, Claudia. And you mentioned too, this standing in a bank. And do you know that there has not been one case, and this is widely available at the CDC website and other sources, there's not been one case of outside transmission of this disease that they can show. Nowhere in the world. And so people wearing face masks outside, exercise, outside, this is just something that they are deciding to do, that they're taking, which again, respect whatever anyone wants to do. But again, making judgments about other people, what they're doing, while, okay, here we got people standing in a bank. If you've been to the airport lately, it's pretty interesting because you go and you go, first of all, let's talk about the Cabo airport.
Yeah.
You walk in, everybody's got their masks on, following the protocols. Then you go, and I'm talking about the international terminal,
Yeah.
you know, or actually the national. Let's talk about the national, because this one's even better. But you walk in and there's that whole center area where there's Starbucks and Subway and all of that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Everyone has their mask on until you step in that, I guess, that bubble of protection that you can take off your mask and nothing happens.
You're sitting down.
So you're sitting down. So COVID's like only at a certain level. Like, I don't know. I don't understand
safe
that.
because I'm short.
So that must be it. So then you go in there and you take off whatever and you drink. And I know a lot of people that just go drink coffee, so they don't have to wear a mask the whole time. They'll just sit down and they find a spot. But then you go to the airplane and there's the little stickers, social distancing, and they're asking you to do that, to get on a plane where you're sitting right next to each other, and then where you can still take off your face mask to eat or drink. My whole point is, this doesn't make sense. And if you question it, like I'm doing now, it's like there's something wrong with you, or you're insane. I'm a conspiracy there, whatever. But the truth is, logically thinking, none of that makes sense. The fact that you walk into a restaurant with your mask on, but you can sit down and take it off, none of it makes sense. And to even question these things, it's because there's this fear that's just in everyone, and they think doing something, whether that's wearing a mask, is actually doing something. And I'm not saying whatever you think about masks, but I have to say, walking into a restaurant with the mask on and taking it off when you're sitting, you're exposed. And so it's just these things that we've just accepted, which a year and a half ago, I think more people would have questioned it.
Yeah, and it takes me back to, and I don't know where this comes from, the meaning of fear, the acronym of false evidence appearing real. I don't know who came up with it. I have a dear friend who gives credit to another friend, David. But anyway, it just, because the powers that be have made it so, we believe it. And I have to say, I confess I've been part of that. I'm sitting at an airport. I'm not sitting in the food court area. I'm uncomfortable wearing a face mask, but I'm wearing the face mask because that's the rule and that's what you do. And I am resenting the person that I know is just pretending to drink coffee just so they don't
It's
have
probably me.
a face mask.
It was probably me.
It was probably you. And I'm going like, what a not nice person, because he should be suffering the same discomfort that I am suffering wearing the face mask. So it becomes an us against them, like, oh, you believe in vaccines. Oh, you don't believe in vaccines. Oh, you're vaccinated. You're not vaccinated. And so all of a sudden, this constant messages about how things should be because the powers that be say so, create greater distance between people. And so on top of everything else, now we're disliking people for all the wrong reasons. So
well,
it's a no-win situation.
And just to say that, just so everyone in the past, can think about what masks used to be used for, were people that were sick, to stop them if they were coughing, to keep from spreading over. And now we have people that have zero symptoms everywhere wearing masks. And even the CDC also has said that if you are asymptomatic, you are not spreading this. So we're still, even though, and why hasn't the media come out and said what the CDC said? Why hasn't the media come out and reported these things? But now people are so bought into it over the year and a half that they're still doing it. They're asymptomatic and they're wearing a mask. It's not, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. But anyway, it's if people feel safe, the way I believe in freedom. And if people feel better with their mask on, you should wear your mask. If you feel like it's making you safer, you should definitely do it. Just like all of these health decisions are really down to the individual. And that's really what the US government was founded on. And I believe the Mexican government also has those same type of protections in there that you should be able to make your choices. And it's been fascinating to watch governments get involved so heavily all over the world. And that's why I come back to this book, A State of Fear. They have actually admitted of using totalitarian measures to scare people into compliance of these lockdowns. That is in the public arena right now, that the British government has admitted that. That should cause everyone to pause and think about all the things that we're doing right now. And again, I just really, really recommend that you read that book. I have another quote on fear, Claudia, that I think is very interesting. It's from Judy Blume, and it just says, each of us must confront our own fears, must come face to face with them. How we handle our fears will determine where we go with the rest of our lives, to experience adventure or to be limited by the fear of it. And I think that's really encompasses people's choice right now, how they're going to experience the rest of their lives. We're all going to die. And if your biggest fear is not dying, I would much rather live in freedom than being worried about how I'm going to die. Yeah. And I feel like it's so much better for your immune system. I think people are getting sick because they're afraid too. There's how many more suicides are there right now? People have lost their business. They've lost everything. The mental health cost of this whole thing. Remember, we spoke to my sister about this. Yeah. Sabino recovery. There is such a cost to that. And it's like people aren't even talking about it, what's happening. And that's why I feel like it reminded me of our health director in the state again, Claudia, that
Dr. Victor George Flores. And he's the one who said, if we go back into red, which means lockdown, the social turmoil that it will cause and the health crisis that we will have because of people getting robbed and mugged and malnutrition and all this will be a higher cost than trying to curb the number of new cases through health measures and maintaining an open economy. I mean, the economy working and the cash flow flowing, and people being able to work. People need that. We need to be able to work and make our ends meet.
It's so refreshing to hear a politician say that, and for even to think about, hey, there's some ramifications of this. We're not just going to lock everybody down and let the chips fall where they may. Yeah. But actually, what are the ramifications of this? And there's plenty of examples around the world, and there's lots of fake news about all of them. But I can tell you, being from Arizona, being back there, it's completely open. Being in Florida, it's completely open. Being in other parts of the United States, South Dakota, that never closed. And did they have people that die? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not more than other places that had more severe lockdowns. And again, it's just interesting to see what fear has caused. And the after effects of this, Claudia, I think is so interesting, because how long are people going to be riding in their cars? I see them riding in their cars with their masks on by themselves. And that's do they think they're keeping themselves from getting sick from themselves? I don't understand it.
I don't know. That is something that blows my mind. Yeah, I think we should find an expert on why people are so afraid of dying, because I think at the end of the day, all this and all these kind of like crazy actions is because people are afraid of dying. But that's the one thing we know, it's going to happen to all of us. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I don't know. Psychologists across the board said that the first step to learn how to manage fear is to learn more about your fear. And so let's each one of us consider, what are we afraid of? And then once you define what that is, learn about it. There's lots of scientific facts that support the reasons for rational action. And again, we are encouraging people to observe all sanitary protocols and be healthy and be safe and all that, but to do so rationally and based on true science.
Yeah, the other thing she brings up in this book is that there's intentional chaos, and when intentional chaos happens and people are separated from each other, people stop understanding what the true sources of information are. All this fake news things, you keep hearing about fake news, everything's fake news. How do you know what's real? And what that serves is also the government's ability for you to make them the expert on everything. And when they say things, because there's so much confusion, that's the source that people are going to believe. And that's unfortunate when you have some actors around the world in charge of their governments that may not have their population's best interest in mind. And that's a very interesting thing. But again, recommend everyone reading this book. And it would be great to have an expert come on the show. We'll find one.
Yeah, let's find one so we can ask them, why are things the way they are?
Well, it's interesting. I have a couple more quotes for you here, because I love these quotes. Yeah. And we have a Mark Twain quote. I'm going to use him again, but whenever you find your favorite. Whenever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. I love that one.
That's a great.
Here's another one. It is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
No one wants to accept the fact that you've been fooled, because that means you are a fool. And no one wants to accept that. So yeah, it's like horse with blinders, you know? Yeah.
Here's a good one. Many a small thing has been made large by the right kind of advertising. I think COVID got a lot of advertising.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one.
And here's another one. Here's one from Charles Mackey from 1841. Men, so I guess you would say men and women, now that we're in
humanity.
Humanity think in herds. It will be seen that they go mad in herds, while only recover their senses slowly and one by one. I think that is a fascinating quote. And here's the last one we'll leave with you, based on this book that we just talked about. This is from George Orwell, another great book to read right now.
Great book.
I guess if you want to stay out of fear, you probably don't want to read this book. So
I think it's good that you read it, because then you can see it coming, you know?
Yeah. So we'll leave with this one. George Orwell says, "We know that no one that ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it."
Absolutely.
So that's a very interesting thing.
My favorite fear quote is from Star Wars.
Yes, Yoda.
And it's
right?
Yoda. And its fear is the path to the dark side. So don't let fear guide your actions at this time or any other time. You know, learn about your fear, learn where it's coming from, and look at the facts and act, not react. I think that's something that every enlightened master has said in many different ways, but at the end of the day, we need to act rather than react.
Life rewards action. And I think we talk about following these safety protocols, which we definitely should, but also, how are you making your immune system better? How are you becoming your best version? And when we get into that kind of a mindset, the fear just goes away. It doesn't give you time to sit around and think about what could happen. What's going to happen is what you make happen. And we know it's a complicated subject. Claudia, I always appreciate doing the show with you and talking about these things. You always bring such great insight to the conversation, and I hope our audience is enjoying this type of conversation. And if you don't agree with it, we understand.
It's fine.
We're just choosing to not be in fear, and showing some examples over the last year and a half how a lot of now proven wrong things by many different authorities that everyone should be listening to is the CDC and the WHO. We've listened to them on everything else, that things that we thought were true are not true, and people are still doing it. And they're doing it because the fear, their habits of fear, and there's just other ways to think about this.
And it's also whenever we're faced with an epidemic in the history of mankind, sometimes the first knowledge was not the best or truest knowledge. They used to bleed people because they had constipation and things like that, and they used to give mercury to people to intake as a cure. So science evolves, knowledge evolves and changes, and a lot of the things that were thought to be true in the beginning of a new disease or ailment will most likely change, and the science will prove that, okay, that was not the best way to treat it, and there will be new treatments. And that's something that the health authorities acknowledge and recognize, and that's why they keep saying, okay, so we thought it was transmitted this way, no, it's not, now it's transmitted this way. And so we also need to be flexible, and we need to learn to flow and stay away from dogma. Dogma is something that does nothing to improve our vision of the real world where we live in.
No, absolutely. Well said, Claudia. Well, that's going to wrap up our discussion on fear and not falling into fear. So, and actually falling into courage. I think we'll leave it on a positive note. Go into courage.
Absolutely. Don't go on the dark side. Don't go with the dark side.
Listen to Yoda. Listen to Yoda.
Yoda knows.
All right, Claudia. Thanks for a great show again. We'll see you next week on Cabomil News and Community Update in English with Korey and Claudia Velo. Have a great one.
Catch you next time.